to DSAT English. My name is Minji Kim and I am with HSC Sylvie. Today we're going to be talking about standard conventions of English, and especially boundaries. So, standard conventions of English is basically the College Board's fancy way of saying grammar. And in the SAT, or the DSAT, we can actually split them up into two major categories: boundaries and form, structure, and sense. As you can see in this lovely little chart here, the boundaries covers linking clauses, supplements, punctuation, linking clauses such as independent clauses to independent clauses or independent clauses to dependent clauses, and knowing whether you need a comma or not, what kind of conjunctions you need, and in what cases you to do what. Supplements include appositives or extra information. Then you have to question, is it necessary information or is it extraneous information that you can create into an appositive, or is it absolutely necessary? Then you have punctuation, so your usage of commas, semicolons, em dashes, periods, etc. Next, you have form, structure, and sense. That covers subject-verb agreement, pronoun-antecedent agreement, verb forms, subject-modifier placement, and plural and possessive nouns. Today, we're only going to be focusing on boundaries and what that entails. However, before we can understand fully what boundaries and everything like that means, we first need to understand the parts of a sentence. The parts of a sentence include many things. There's some that aren't on this list, but this basically covers the majority of the key parts of a sentence. We have the clause, and there are two types of clauses: the independent clause, or IC, or the dependent clause, DC. Clauses have a simple subject and a verb. Now, the difference between an independent clause and a dependent clause is that an independent clause, while it has both a subject and a verb, and it can stand on its own. For example, I like ice cream. A dependent clause also has a verb and a noun. However, in this case, it can't stand on its own. And an example of this would be, while I am lactose intolerant. That is a dependent clause, because while I am lactose intolerant is not a full sentence. And then you can combine independent clauses with more independent clauses, or you can combine it with dependent clauses, and yeah. Those form complex sentences or compound sentences or compound complex sentences, depending on what type of clauses you combine and how you do it. Alrighty, next we have conjunctions. Conjunctions are used when you link two independent clauses together. So conjunctions can include your fanboys. You can also be using your semicolons, or you could just split the two independent clauses into two different sentences using a period, and then capitalize the first letter of the next sentence. Next, you have the simple subject. So the simple subject is the is the noun that is kind of doing the verb, or is the thing that the verb is talking about. So if I say I like ice cream, then I am the simple subject. Despite ice cream also being there and being a noun, I am the one who is doing the liking. So the simple subject of the sentence would be I, the verb would be like. Modifiers are very interesting. They're more tested in part with the form, structure, and sense. However, it can be a vital part of boundaries. Modifiers help modify a noun. So, for example, walking down the street, I saw an ice cream shop. So walking down the street is going to be that modifier, and it is modifying I because it's telling us what I am doing when I see that ice cream shop. Appositives are very important when you're introducing people. For example, when I say, I don't know, let's say I have a made-up scientist named Dr. Martin Lee, an astrophysicist, explores astrophysics or something like that. In that case, an astrophysicist wrapped around in commas is going to be a positive because it tells us extra information, extra identifying information about this Dr. Lee. And so in that case, that information is considered extraneous or unnecessary information because we have a name for this person. So if we have like 1,000 people, we can still identify it as that person because of that name. Thus, we didn't actually need that information from the grammatical sense, but it is nice to have that information that he is an astrophysicist. Next, we can look at prepositional phrases, or PP, and prepositional phrases are going to start with prepositions generally. For example, on the way home, or over the hill, or inside of the box. So these are all prepositional phrases and they help you set the setting. Then you have your standard M dashes, N dashes, periods, exclamation marks for your punctuation. For direct object and indirect objects, let's say there's a sentence. He gave the gift to me. In this case, the simple subject would be he, the verb is gave. The direct object would be the gift, or the present. He gave the present to me. So the present would be the direct object because the present is the one receiving the verb. So the present is being given. The indirect object would be me, to me, because I am the one receiving the DO. So next we have boundaries. In boundary questions, make sure to look at the parts of sentence, the logical pattern, and grammatical correctness. By this I mean, in parts of sentence, what is this blank doing in the sentence? Is it the simple subject? Is it an appositive? Is it a modifier? What is it doing in that sentence? Next, you also have to figure out within the context of the sentence or these sentences, is it extra information or is it necessary information? So if it's necessary information, then do we need an appositive? No. If it's extra information, then yeah, it could be an appositive. Next, we also have to look at grammatical correctness in general. So you know that you can never separate a simple subject and its verb with a semicolon. That's ludicrous. So just look for things like that. For example, in this question from the SAT College Board question bank, let's see how we can approach this. First, we read through what we are given. We know that it's a conventions of standard English question, and I identify this as a boundary question. So a recent study tracked the number of bee species present in 27 New York apple orchards over a 10-year period. So here we see the end of a sentence, new sentence. Blank found that when wild growth near an orchard was cleared, the number of different bee species visiting the orchard decreased. So here we have the choices entomologist Heather Grab, So clearly we're talking about this entomologist. Now the first thing we need to consider is Heather Grab necessary information or extra information? In this case, I would say that it is necessary information because if we just say an entomologist, we don't know who this entomologist is. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of entomologists out there, and we have no idea which entomologist it was. So by providing this name, we know that the entomologist was named Heather Grab, thus this is necessary identifying information. So we can immediately eliminate B. Next, let's look at what part of the sentence the entomologist is. So in this case, entomologist Heather Grab found, the number of different bee species visiting the orchard decreased. So we see that entomologist Heather Grab is actually the simple subject of this sentence, and the verb is found. So in between this, we should not have a comma, nor should we have a colon. Thus, we can eliminate A and D, and we are left with C. In this question, we see that this is again, standard conventions of English question, and it appears to be a boundary question. So let's read through. Roughly 300 nights a year, when the cold air descending from the Andes Mountains meets the warm air rising from Venezuela's coastal Lake Maracaibo, the result is a spectacular lightning storm. It strikes so bright, so localized, and so dependable that it has become known as Maracaibo's lighthouse. Right off the bat, the first thing I notice is the simple subject of the sentence is result. The verb associated with that is. So the result is a spectacular lightning storm is the main body of this sentence. Next, I also notice that the entire thing is one sentence. Third thing I notice is that there's this comma right here. This comma seems to be the key of defining what everything after it is. So let's keep that in mind. Next, we look at the so bright, so localized, and so dependable. That's a triad. So also note that it's strikes. So it appears to be a modifier. So it strikes so bright, so localized, and so dependable. This is all modifying storm. So it is a modifier. After that, I notice that there's a that it has become known as. That tells me that we absolutely cannot have a fanboys connection or a semicolon connection here. Because after a semicolon or a fanboys conjunction, we need to have an independent clause. However, I don't see an independent clause in that it has become known as. So automatically, we can eliminate B from our answer pool. Next, I want to take a look at answer choice D, which has a comma. Now, if we add a comma after dependable, it actually pairs with the comma after lightning storm. So it makes it strikes so bright, so localized, and so dependable into an appositive. And because it's an appositive, it means that's extra information that is unnecessary. Therefore, if you remove that appositive, everything should still make grammatical sense. However, if you do remove it, we get the result is a spectacular lightning storm that it has become known as Maracaibo's lighthouse. Unfortunately, this does not make grammatical sense, so we can also eliminate D. So now we're left with answer choices A and C. Now, this one can be a little bit tricky, but let's look at why A cannot be the answer. A cannot be the answer because there's a colon there. As you know, colons can be used to make lists or to emphasize things, but in this case, if we use a colon and we have that it has become known as Maracaibo's lighthouse, it just simply does not make sense. You would not use a colon and then follow it up with that it has become known as. Thus, the only answer choice is C, because when you use C without anything after it, then everything after that comma is simply a modifier. And thus, you can theoretically, grammatically, get rid of the entire thing and still be left with a fully functioning sentence. As we noted that the previous section to the result is, everything before that is simply just a prepositional phrase. So, and a modifier, we can also just get rid of that. So if we test C, then we can get rid of everything except for the result is a spectacular lightning storm, which which is an independent clause and a fully functioning sentence. Thus, the answer has to be C. In conclusion, just make sure to brush up on all of your grammar skills. Additionally, make sure for boundary questions to look at the context. What is the part of speech that is missing? Are there any commas nearby? Are there any em dashes nearby? Is there a independent clause following right after? Is there a dependent clause following right after? Does it make grammatical sense? And make sure to plug in all of your answer choices. And if you have any type of a positive modifier or any extra information type of sentence structure, then try and get rid of it just out of the sentence completely, and then read it inside of your mind to see if what remains is still grammatically correct. Alrighty, see you in the next video and good luck.